recruitment. This is going to be the best session of the day, so thank you all for joining. Really excited to be here. So what we're going to talk about at a high level is delivering immersive experiences through storytelling, insights, and data. But really what we're going to talk about is really how great brands combine qualitative and quantitative techniques to engage their customers. So it's going to be a really interesting discussion. Before we get started, let's do a quick round of introductions. I'll start. So I'm Alex from mParticle. For those of you who don't know mParticle's an AI-powered customer data platform. Take all your data, put it in one place, your real-time data, put it in one place, develop a C360 profile of that data, and then activate that across downstream channels. We work closely with MoEngage. We have a booth here, so if you're interested in learning more, we'd love to talk to you. But enough about me. Love to hear from the rest of the panel. Maybe you can introduce yourselves, tell us more about your company. Maybe we can start here.
Yeah, is this on? Yeah, okay. Hi, I'm Sarah Argus. I am leading design at Resort Pass. Resort Pass is both a B2B and a B2C company where we partner with hotels to sell their amenities to everyone here. So if you ever want a day by the pool, a nice spa, just like a really cool day at a hotel, we're really trying to shift that mindset from hotels equaling travel to hotels equaling everyday luxury.
Hi, my name is Jessica Simeone, and I am from Octapharma Plasma. We are the plasma collection subset of the Octapharma company. We like to market ourselves as the only store in the shopping center where you'll walk out with more money than you go in with. So plasma donation is a super vital part of medicine, and a lot of people don't realize that plasma can't be manufactured in a lab, so getting donors through the door and making sure that they donate and they continue with us and we offer them that positive experience and let them know the good they're doing is the hugest part of all of that, and my job is to kind of relay all those messages digitally and kind of foster that relationship with our donor base.
Hi guys, I'm Jordan Scott. I'm the founder and CEO of Cobble. I hope by the end of this panel you all download Cobble. It's an app. It's basically, I started it back in 2020 when I kept on having the conversation with my husband every night. What do you want to do tonight? I don't know. What do you want to do? And I sort of realized that there was this massive issue of indecision when it comes to how we spend our time together. And every sort of tech that's out there, whether it's Netflix or Amazon or Expedia, it's all focused on reaching the individual and helping the individual make a decision. But we don't make decisions completely on our own. We're having these conversations. And so if you're even familiar with like the group chat planning a big birthday dinner that goes nowhere, you'll understand the problem that we're trying to solve. So we're in 7 markets: New York, LA, Atlanta, Miami, Austin, Dallas, and Chicago. We were in New York for 2.5 years, and we just waterfalled the rest of those cities, so still trying to remember them. But yeah, really focused on helping people make decisions together.
Great. Well, great panel. So let's start by talking about immersive experiences. And I think the audience would be really interested in understanding what each of you thinks, or how you formulate these immersive experiences to engage your customers. Maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, so most people don't think about a daycation. I think we invented the word just like everyone else does at their companies. And so one of the ways we're really trying to build immersive experiences is trying to capture what a daycation means to people. And sometimes it's relaxing. Sometimes it's a party night out. Sometimes it's just an everyday celebration of your sobriety anniversary or a cancer-free moment. Like, we're trying to capture the everyday and trying to explain that in a way. And currently we're using a lot of text and images on the site, but trying to be a little bit more innovative in the next coming years of how we can kind of immerse people into those experiences, especially at the luxe hotels that they've never been able to afford to go to. And so I would say, as far as the inspiration goes, it's me literally going to those places and having a nice day by the pool. So I probably have the best job out of everyone here. But yeah, that's what I think ours is trying to tell that story and information at the right time in the funnel, because you don't want to overload them at the beginning.
That's great, and I would beg to differ. I think that me going to all the plasma centers in the country is way better. But at Octapharma, the way that we kind of conduct immersive experiences is really kind of getting the donors to understand their why and feel educated on their how. So plasma donation as a concept feels very daunting because you're going into this medical facility and you're letting people stick needles in your arm for like 45 minutes, and it's not exactly the most approachable thing to somebody who has never done it before. So we kind of try to pair the financial aspect of the money that you'll receive for donating for your time and those altruistic aspects that are actually very similar to what Sarah was talking about with her altruistic aspects of those cancer survivors and people who are dealing with hemophilia who can now live like healthy and fruitful lives because of plasma-derived medications. We work with somebody directly in Charlotte who has 2 sons who have hemophilia, and one of them really wants to be a race car driver, and he's doing like little tiny stock cars at the racetrack, and she said that she feels like she's like resting assured because he's taking his infusions of plasma and he won't have spontaneous bleeds, he won't bruise. So I think for us, immersive experiences are really letting the donor feel connected to those magical moments that they help create and the moments that they create for themselves with the finances that they get.
Wow, it's beautiful. I mean, at Cobble, everything we build is about helping people get to incredible experiences at the end of the day, whatever that is for them and their people that they're figuring that out with. I think we're very inspired by the cities that we're launched in, too. You know, there's so many incredible creators from, you know, restaurants and new concepts and events and experiences, and it's our job at Cobble to make sure we're putting the right ideas in front of the right people at the right time. And making, you know, an immersive experience to us is making sure that everyone is included in that experience from the beginning of figuring out what you're actually interested in all the way to the very end of the night where you've had this really special experience. And Cobble was part of helping you decide and keeping everyone in the loop and making sure all of the right reminders are sent over email and SMS, and I think that's really what inspires us, is like helping those event organizers and restaurants, like filling those audiences and filling those restaurants and with the right people.
Yeah, and I guess I'd love to dovetail that question. So consumers get bombarded with a lot of messages. So how do you all think about making a splash, kind of reaching through that all those messages that consumers see?
Can I just make a joke about pools, about making a splash in the industry? I would probably say that we do a lot of research, and one of the things that we just learned through this idea of like how far is too far to be relevant, and I'm sure you're probably thinking about that, like all of my friends are in different places. Do I want to get messages for a hotel that's 30 miles away, that's 3 hours away? And so that really comes down to just asking them. It's as simple as that. And so what we were doing was marketing for people 3 hours away, and who really wants to take a vacation and still have to drive 3 hours there and 3 hours back? No. You might as well just stay overnight at that hotel. And so through interviewing people, it's different for different markets too. You're accounting for traffic time. You're accounting for availability within that specific area. And so we asked them, and so now we're really integrating some of that data into our email campaigns and our push notifications. So in LA, it's within a 30-minute drive. If it's in Florida, it's an hour drive. And so really customizing based on markets.
Awesome. And for Octapharma, we kind of took a look at the plasma industry as a whole and how plasma donation has been marketed in the past. And a lot of it is very much the same tagline of donate plasma, earn money. And we kind of wanted to change the script on that. So a little over a year ago, we trademarked the phrase Plasmagic. It's a little pun, where we talk about the everyday magical moments that plasma helps to cultivate, reading your child a story is magic. Being able to read because plasma has helped you regain part of your sight, that's Plasmagic. So kind of just creating those magical moments and kind of elevating those so that not only do people who might not even donate understand the purpose of what we do, and it like leads to destigmatization of what plasma donation is, but it makes the donor feel more connected to our brand. I've heard from many donors that they chose our center even though another center of a different brand was closer to us, just because the staff was friendly and we told good stories. And so, I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is like making a difference in your industry by seeing how everybody else positions it and where people are missing out.
Yeah, very similarly. I think the way that Cobble stands out is, as much as you can, pointing out to your audience the alternative. For us, that's the status quo. That's the group chat that's going on, and someone's not responding, and this person doesn't want to travel that far, and this person doesn't want to spend that much, and being like, this is the alternative. And now this is what Cobble is doing, and this is how, this is a sample plan of like what a great night could look like for you, and you can actually create this plan. Just open it in your app, and I think showcasing like the problem and reminding them of the problem, but also offering like an immediate like opportunity to engage with your brand is something that we're working on.
Yeah, really interesting. I think maybe we can transition a bit to talking about data and how kind of data plays into some of these initiatives. And I know, Jessica, we had a chance to catch up earlier, and I thought it was really interesting how you described your progression in terms of your use of data over the past few years. And we see that a lot of particle organizations progress in terms of their sophistication and what they do with data. So I was hoping you could share a bit more about that progression.
Oh yeah, of course. So when I started my time at Octapharma 2 years ago, our entire marketing team was relatively new. Prior to our team joining on, our strategy was very reactive, but we wanted to move more in a proactive direction. So things like data and analytics really were a key driving factor in us predicting more of what we needed to do, even before the donor knew what they wanted. And we have donation centers in about 34 to 37 states right now. So there's a lot of different types of people with a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of different financial history. So it's kind of learning how to leverage the financial and the altruistic and knowing when to insert what, depending on the demographics, depending on what these people need, their income bracket, their interests, learning that like where our donors spend their money after they leave our centers and how we can create content that kind of partners with the things they're already looking to spend their money on. Like one of the big things that they spend their money on is gas and car repairs. So trying to kind of leverage partnerships with gas stations or kind of working in the local area and using that information that we gather to really tailor the communication to what that donor needs.
So yeah, I think getting third-party data, really interesting ways. So if you guys haven't been to Resort Pass, an amazing site, love it, love the graphic, love the creatives, fantastic job. So I'd be interested in knowing how you think about data at Resort Pass, given that you have just a great sort of creatives and sort of qualitative experience. So what are some of the challenges you've had potentially using data?
Yeah, if you think it looks good now, wait for a couple of months. I know what's in development. Happy to give you the secrets if you want. But I often find that quantitative data alone can be really challenging as a designer because it's not telling the entire picture. And my best friend who's a marketer, we have this constant conversation of thin sight versus insight, and thin sight being what's the summary of the data and what is it saying. But if you're playing the toddler game of asking why 500 times, you're really getting into that deeper insight. And so just because, I have an example of this is I used to work at a direct-to-consumer women's healthcare brand. And one of the projects we were working on was creating a customized period box of products that's specifically personalized for you. And so depending on the absorbency level you need, you can pick from light, super, super plus, all of the things based on what you need. But through usability testing, I realized a lot of women that I was testing with had zero idea what they should really actually be purchasing. And so I had this what should I order pop-up, but we all know customers don't love to read, so I knew that there was something better that I could design. And so I wanted this amazing experience where tampons could be floating in and out of the box with wings and all these things. And my engineers gave me a super crazy look. And I said, okay, let's start with something a little bit more basic in terms of the design. But maybe we could pre-fill the box with a predetermined popular assortment. So women could come to the site and not feel so daunted by that white page phenomenon. And so when I did this, I worked with my data analyst. We found the most popular that was ordered. And then at this time, the company was fairly new. It was small. We hadn't gotten into retail yet. It was purely direct to consumer. And I launched it. I was so proud. I was sharing this feature with my friends. And I was like, look, you have a visualization of your box of exactly what you're going to get. Isn't it cool? And I got a lot of weird looks from my friends. And they're like, this assortment would not work for me. And I'm like, oh shit. I actually used data and it didn't work. And so through talking with more and more friends and doing a little bit more medical research, I wish I had you on my team, I realized that our data was showing past popular assortments, and we weren't thinking about our total addressable market. And so there was no why as to what our data set was, and if it did, it would have had biological factors in it, especially when it comes to periods. Women of color tend to have heavier periods. Sorry, I probably should have put like a warning that I'm talking about women's healthcare products behind me. But because of uterine fibroids and stress, and we find that different populations tend to have different medical needs, and I wasn't accounting for that because our data was mostly for fit white women because that's who I was designing for at the time. And so I think when it comes to working with data and designing really immersive, personalized storytelling experiences, you have to really check yourself and make sure that you're not using a thin site versus an insight. And yeah, that was a huge failure on my part, but you know, I've left that company so far. So we've moved on to Resort Pass, where most of my data is now qualitative because we're so young, we don't have a ton of quantitative data.
So the thin site, what can you just describe that in a little bit more detail?
Yeah, the thin site was my data for a custom assortment for all of our users should have been like 1 light, 3 regulars, 4 supers, yada, yada, yada. The insight would have been we could take more of our total addressable market to maybe make it more even. And even if we couldn't have made it even, made it so that when a woman came to the website and they saw that default box, that they didn't feel strange, they didn't feel odd, they didn't feel like an other because they didn't think it was going to be right for them.
Interesting. Do you guys have any experiences with this thin side versus inside paradigm?
Yeah,
it's the first time I've heard it.
Story of Cobble's early life, which we are still in. Yeah, I mean, actually, as you were speaking, it reminded me of a story where we did so many user interviews, which I know you are going to get into the triangle that I talked about. Is it okay if I jump to that? Okay,
next question.
Basically, I saw this triangle a couple of years ago that was like how we make decisions with data, and the top point was your gut, and this point over here was qualitative, and this point over here was quantitative. And the person who was showing me this was like, if you're really honest with yourself, like we all lean towards one point of this triangle, just naturally. And of course, I was like, I know I'm gut. I know I felt like that was a bad thing, but I was like, I'm a journalist. I used to be a journalist. I'm very creative. And if I had to pick a second, it would probably be qualitative. But quantitative is always like the scary thing to me. And what I learned was, you know, all 3, of course, like have to interact. One is not better than the other. And actually, all 3 can really screw you up. You know, your gut is often, you know, misguided, whether that's because of the moment you're in or, you know, something that happened, but your gut can definitely be wonky. Qualitative, we all know when we talk to users, they can send you on like a wild goose chase in the wrong direction, and everybody wants a different feature, and you cannot listen to individuals and just immediately build for them. And of course, quantitative, you know, you can really get data to say anything you want. You know, a good example is like, say we put out a new feature in Cobble and 2% of our users are interacting with it. Well, is it 2% of our users are interacting with it because the feature sucks? Is it because the feature is broken? Is it because no one can find the feature? All we know is that only 2% are using it. So that was a really great lesson for me. I do believe it starts with gut. And you're figuring out, you know, how can I use qualitative and quantitative to either disprove or prove what my gut is saying. And so that's sort of how our team works. I mean, I think I'm definitely more gut. We have our director of growth operations in the audience. I would say he's probably more qualitative, and then our CTO is definitely quantitative. So it's about figuring out how we can all communicate, and yeah, it's a journey.
Yeah, it's super interesting to hear how you manage the qualitative, the quantitative. Be curious how you all have thought about that. How do you, so this triangle metaphor is really, so are the 3?
Gut, quantitative, qualitative.
Yeah, okay. How do you guys think about it?
I mean, I agree with a lot of what Jordan said. I definitely think that using your gut first and then you letting the qualitative and the quantitative kind of inform that gut decision is a really good way to go about it. I think that the challenge with using gut in my personal scenario is that we are regulated and comply with the FDA, and so we kind of can only let our guts go so far before we have to kind of reel it back in and make sure that we're being compliant. So, it ruins the fun sometimes, but right now I think we're really focusing on how our qualitative and quantitative data kind of dance with one another, how the different types of donor stories and the different types of personas interact with the demographics that we have to back them up, and how we can kind of create blanketed approaches where it's appropriate, but then also where to kind of silo out and create like deliberate communication with specific groups. So quantitative allows me to see who we have in front of us, and then qualitative allows me to kind of tap into their emotions and their needs.
And just for everyone's benefit, so when you define qualitative and can you give examples of qualitative and quantitative data and how you're obtaining that data?
Well, for like in my experience, qualitative data is usually more sentiment-based. So seeing what kind of repeat things are being said by our donors online, whether it be in reviews or just candid posts, where quantitative is more like, this person is in this demographic in this region, they interact with us this many times, they interact with this kind of content or on this touch point more than this touch point. So it's really kind of taking the person at their core and like their true personality and then branching that out to kind of fit the narrative that our quantitative data is trying to show us.
I have a question for you, actually, Jessica. Have you, if you have you ever tried to quantify your qualitative data? And if so, how did you do that? If 90 people are saying one thing, it's can you then say, we have...
Well, it's actually really interesting because our COO made this really interesting speech at one point when we were talking about a culture shift within our company, but I really think it applies to our donors as well. And honestly, the measuring of qualitative sentiment can kind of be on a bell curve. You're always going to have people who are to the left who are never going to agree with you no matter how hard you try to convince them. And then there's those people on the right that don't need convincing, and it's really that middle pocket where we have that opportunity. So I would say to quantify that, we probably just look at how many people are on the left versus the right, and we always try to make sure the right is obviously the heavier side, but making sure that that group in the middle is the one that we kind of address through numbers and figures.
I would bet my team is trying to quantify how often my gut is wrong versus right, but I'll talk to them after.
It's probably never wrong, right?
Never. I mean, yeah, we'll see.
Anybody else team qualitative data all the way? I am the feeler of my team, and that's why they hired me. I have a bunch of PMs and engineers and analytic people that are there, and I'm there to counter them with feelings and thoughts. And I get most of them through interviewing our customers, watching our users creepily on Hotjar to see how they're interacting with our site. But I would say, when I'm working on projects and I bring in some of our data science people and they're like, so what was the N on this? And I was like, well, I surveyed 6 people. And they're like, oh, Sarah's the worst. And what I've come to realize is that not all people value qualitative, and it's that triangle. And so one of the weird analogies or sayings that I thought about a long time ago is TSA. And so not airport security check-in, but TSA of togetherness, storytelling, and archive. So togetherness being that quantitative and qualitative data are really, truly better together when they help support each other's story. And so if you can find common ground with those CEOs or those business leads that are analytical thinkers, if your data is both saying the same thing, then you can start to win them over. For storytelling, it's basically about using personas and painting a movie of what just happened in all of your interviews and really kind of sucking them in. So really trying to be a salesperson there. And then in terms of archive, which is the last of them, is you're not going to win quantitative thinkers overnight. It's going to take time. And so I highly recommend creating some sort of even basic archive system of all of the qualitative research you've done, whether it's as extensive as using something like Dovetail, which is a great, super robust research platform, or even something as simple as like a table of contents of all of the research you've made with some of the summaries and findings that you've used. And so by using that over time, really trying to get people to see the story within some of the data.
And I just want to add one more thing off of what you just said. I think that, yeah, like you're totally right that nobody's going, like a quantitative thinker is not going to be like, oh, qualitative is the way to go. But I think that in order to get to the more nitty-gritty of the quantitative data, they need to put a little bit of trust into qualitative. I would almost put a dotted line to trust off of qualitative, because you kind of have to trust that the information that you're getting in terms of sentiment, in terms of who's speaking up and who's telling you their thoughts, like how accurate is that to the entire donor base or the entire customer base, and kind of making sure that the people who are in charge know that they can trust you with those insights and those observations, and that you know that they're coming from the right place and they'll be reflected in the quantitative data you pull together.
And I do think that all three of us make a great triangle in terms of
We're starting
data.
a new business.
But I do want to say, like, it's interesting. I've heard a few things here about, like, not looking at the past data is truth because you're forgetting about the future. But if you're looking at quantitative data, that's kind of telling you what's happening in the past. Qualitative data is kind of telling you exactly what's happening right now. And then your gut feeling is helping you be more innovative for the future. So I don't think there's a wrong way. I do think that you should have like a power quad of like women on your team that are all different thinkers.
And the thing with what you said about past being truth, it's actually a lot harder than it used to be to identify past being truth, because ever since the pandemic, the way that we interact with brands and the way that we do things in life, like going to resorts or choosing where we go out for a night out, or how we interact with medical facilities is changing. It's the attitudes are changing, and it was really a cultural reset. So looking at what was happening in 2019 might not always be the most accurate way to make decisions now, because your customer base has probably turned over, more people have discovered you, or in Jordan's case, the brand discovered itself. So she had to bring it up in a world that was already pretty different than we were all used to. So I definitely think that that's also something that you can consider is like with the quantified minds of our companies.
It's really, so maybe just to double click on that a bit more, this is a great discussion. What are those, can you just tell a few more details on what those conversations are like when you come with qualitative data and maybe there's quantitative data as well? Like how do you navigate those just tactically, and how do you kind of get folks in agreement and alignment?
I can give a very specific example. In the early days of Cobble, we were actually focused on couples, as I just described. It was me and my husband fighting about what we were going to eat for dinner. And I was like, oh my God, there's nothing for couples. Everything is a dating app and finding your partner, but there's nothing for once you're with someone and now you're arguing every night. And so that was the original target. And we had a very simple interface where you connected with your partner in Cobble, and when you both swiped right on a restaurant, you matched, that's where you went. It was very simple. And what we realized very quickly was that people who loved that version of Cobble were like, I want to make decisions with people beyond my significant other. So we knew we had to expand into groups and friendships and all sorts of other relationships. And people were also so confused by swiping. They were like, I haven't been on a dating app ever, or like, it's been years since I've been on a dating app. What does swiping right mean? Is that like, yes, if left, is it gone forever? Like I had friends texting me like, which way do I swipe? So we were like, okay, we need to get rid of swiping. So we did, but we never changed the design. It still looked like swiping. We just had these buttons that were more obvious, like what it meant. And we did this round of user interviews a few months ago where people were furious that they couldn't swipe. They were like, I am trying to swipe and I can't swipe and I hate this app. And we were like, oh my God, like I had no idea that it didn't even change the functionality. It was like, but they hated it so much. And then we added in some tracking to see how many people were trying to swipe, and it was disturbing to say the least. It was pretty much every single person who ever opened the app was trying to swipe. And so the latest release that we did that is coming out on Monday, so please, maybe wait till Monday to download Cobble. We brought swiping back, and we did it in a new and fresh way that now I believe is pretty clear of like what it means to swipe right and left. And anyways, long story, but if you're going to change a major piece of functionality, make sure the design goes along with it.
Any insights that you have to share around how you've kind of navigated those conversations?
I mean, I've definitely had plenty of conversations about the quantitative things with our payment and operations teams. They're very focused on like churn and processing time and all of that, and those are obviously super duper important to our bottom line and very, very vital. But there's those times in those meetings, you know, those very sweaty, anxious times where you have to speak up and say, did we think about how this is actually going to affect the donor? And like, you know, it's one thing if we lose out on a couple of leaders, but it's another thing if our reputation goes down. So I think that for me, like a lot of the quantitative conversations have been more trying to pull people into the frame of being qualitative and kind of being like, come with me, I'll show you the way, I'll show you who our donors actually are. And they kind of bring me back down to earth. So I think that that's kind of the relationship I have with like quantitative versus qualitative conversations and bringing people over to my own side.
Come to the dark side of feelings. I would say I like to qualify things now with customer support time. If we are messing things up so bad that people are writing in, then that's X amount of hours that tickets have to be responded to. That's X amount of dollars that can visibly be seen in salaries. And so I think tying it back to money always wins my CEO over, and I don't think he's in the audience, so I can say that.
Cool. So I'm sure none of you have ever launched a campaign that didn't work. So maybe you can talk about other folks that have done that. But it's always great to talk about failure. So when things didn't work. I was wondering if you guys could comment on different types of immersive experiences that you've had that just didn't work and maybe why they didn't work.
None of us. We're all perfect.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can start. I have no problem admitting my shortcomings. So I learned pretty quickly when I started my role a couple of years ago that our donors do not like to be contacted that much, and they really prefer purposeful sends. They want to know when their test results are in. They want to know when they can come back. They want to know when they can get more money. That's really like, when it comes to communicating to them through like touch points like email, SMS, and push, it really comes down to sending them purposeful things. However, I did notice that when we do mention altruism in a larger email, it gets a lot of clicks. So while people wouldn't open an email completely dedicated to a donor story, dropping a donor story as a box at the bottom of an email is a great way to get clicks, and it actually drives a lot of engagement because our donors don't realize that they actually do want to know about this altruistic information. They only open what's important to them. They get bombarded with emails and push all the time. So it's like we're just kind of noise. So when they find something that they need, but then they can find something that they can emotionally latch onto, it kind of works as a perfect pairing. So it wasn't necessarily a failure as much as it was being kind of short-sighted at the time. But now that I've kind of gotten to know our donor base, it's really helped me a lot to kind of look at what people like seeing and then putting what I think they'd want to see in those things that they do engage with.
I think I have also like more of a short-sighted example. I'll tell a story of when we actually had like a smashing success that turned into a failure, which was we had this great idea to, on a weekly basis, send out an SMS to our user base with like a highly coveted reservation that like they couldn't get otherwise, which being our platform, we had connections with those restaurants, things like that. And so we would send it out and we'd get tons of clicks into the app, everybody entering the giveaway to like get the reservation. And what ended up happening was like with each week, it started getting lower and lower and lower clicks. And we sort of figured out that that's because like after a certain amount of time, people like just stop believing that they ever have a chance to win this thing, and yet it just becomes like this annoying text that they're getting that they're like, this is not actually doing anything. And also the reservation was for a specific, night and time, and often the winner like couldn't even go. So it was like, what was even the point of all of that? And so what we pulled it, we stopped sending that text message, but now we're actually in the process of rethinking what giveaways look like and thinking about, okay, maybe less regularly, maybe like a little bit more special, maybe like once a month or something. And also for everyone who enters but doesn't win, is there something else we can offer them specifically? Can we give them inside access to getting a reservation there in a couple of weeks? How can we help the people that we, didn't do anything for? And so that was something that, you can see the huge spikes in engagement on the days that we sent those texts, but at the end of the day, it wasn't something that was really great.
I'm still trying to get Hamilton tickets, so I get
Hint,
that.
I can
hint.
help you get Sweeney Todd tickets if you're at all interested in that.
Good to know. A failure. I fail almost every single day, but I have the beauty of checking myself during user testing. I never send anything to my engineers unless I've shown it to somebody else. A most recent example, we're redoing our homepage right now because a lot of people are coming to our site and they're like, what are you guys? Are you guys a hotel? I don't understand. So there was this huge educational factor that we needed to overcome. And yeah, we could A/B test the headline as much as we wanted, but I think it really came down to the layout. So I had this like super cool, my CEO really likes to say like a luxe experience, a luxe brand. And so what does that mean to some of our customers and what does that mean to us as a brand? And I had this like super cool, innovative homepage that I was like so proud of, and I put it into user testing and it flopped. And I was like, cool. Nobody likes my designs. And those are the days where like you eat a pint of ice cream and go to bed and you're like, it'll be better tomorrow. But I redesigned it based on something that people already resonated with, which were like, what does a hotel homepage look like? If they're going to hotels, why don't we look at inspiration from some of the things that they're already doing? And it's in development right now. We're super pumped, but it was rated super high in user testing, and we're really excited to launch it. So instead of reinventing the wheel, which I think a lot of creatives like to do, I think taking a step back, checking your ego and being like, well, user patterns are there for a reason. And if you're already adding a new concept, new education, then maybe something a little bit more familiar on the design side may help counteract some of that confusion.
Yeah, makes sense. So I think we have a few minutes left, and there's this topic that some of us have heard about called AI. I think it might have been mentioned a couple times today. So we have to talk about it. So would love to get all of your perspectives on AI, how you see AI impacting your business, how you think about leveraging AI within kind of these immersive experiences.
Well, as the gut girl, I was very intimidated by AI, but knew that I needed to use it, but also knew just like how amazing it would be for a product like Cobble, where if people are making decisions on your platform, how can we start predicting those decisions so that we can make the decisioning process even faster and more fun and easy? And so I was overwhelmed with like, oh, the potential, and you can sort of get frozen when you are in a position like that. And so I would recommend that there is a way to inject AI in a really, really tiny way. I'll give you the example of what we did with Cobble. So something we're figuring out right now is scaling faster than just city by city, but actually helping people make decisions wherever they are. And so in order to do that, can people add their own content to Cobble, not just have Cobble's curated content? And what we did was allow basically users to enter the name of a place, and we're using ChatGPT to spin up a description of that place, grab some images, do some stuff to just quickly make content. That was so simple and easy, and I promise it really was. So like if you can think about, the tiniest way that you can just describe something in your product, like try it out and see what the impact is. But for us, it's been a nice step for me to, cross the threshold of the scary AI.
And I think that we're kind of using it to the same kind of capacity. We've really been getting involved in what I like to call AI first drafts. So if we're writing a blog post, I find that AI kind of configures the information that I want to share in a way that I wouldn't have thought to do it. So it kind of keeps it from getting stale, but while still maintaining our voice. So I usually leverage AI like ChatGPT to kind of give us the bones of a blog post, and then me or my social media specialist will go back in and we'll rewrite and we'll kind of add that human touch to it, because I think that while AI is incredible, I think you should never lose the human connection, especially if you're in a human-driven business. So I think that as long as you are agile enough to work with the AI, I think there's room for both AI and human-driven content. I think it's just learning when to use what.
I think at Resort Pass, we just got our foundational website in a good place right now, but in the next coming years, we've really thought about how to help with convenience and also how to help with accessibility. So as far as the convenience sort of things, if you're thinking about us partnering with the hotels, they're trying to factor what is the best price I can get for a day pass at the pool or at the spa. And so it's really manual for them to consider things like capacity, past performances, even the weather for that upcoming weekend. So I think AI is going to be huge for that. And then for the marketplace side of things, people with hard of like visual impairments, I mean, how annoying is it to have to like go filter for your perfect staycation? Wouldn't it be great to have like a text to search function and utilizing some of the technology to help people that don't have great sight, great hearing, even mobile limitations? So that's how we're thinking about it right now.
Just getting started, it sounds like. Really exciting. Well, that's it. Thank you guys so much for participating. Can we give them a hand? Great panel.